Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Nights. This is Kevin, and tonight we have a collection of rainy tales. But first, let's just take a moment to relax and get comfortable. Just take a small moment to find a position where you can fully let your body rest. Maybe letting your head sink into a pillow, feeling that gentle support. Now, let's take a deep, slow breath in through our nose. And as you breathe out, just imagine the stress exiting your body. As we breathe again, we become even more relaxed. We become heavy and still. We can feel a wave of calm moving slowly upward from our toes, all the way to the top of our heads. There's no need to concentrate too deeply to the story. Just simply let my voice carry you as we drift into tonight's tale. Now, as your breathing becomes as steady as raindrops, and your mind as quiet as a city street at midnight, prepare to join me in a story of discovery, connection, and the gentle magic found in the sleeping hours of New York's past. You sit at your desk in the corner of New York Chronicle's bustling newsroom, staring at the stack of photographs your editor has just returned. The red pencil marks across your work cut deep. Too stiff. No feeling. Technically perfect, but where's the heart? Walsh, Editor Barnes calls from his doorway. You got a minute? You straighten your tie before walking across the worn wooden floor. Past reporters hammering out tomorrow's headlines. A late afternoon sun slants through tall windows, catching dust motes and cigarette smoke in beams of amber light. I'll be straight with you, Barnes says when you enter, removing his glasses to rub the bridges of his nose. Your technical skills are unquestionable, but that's not what sells newspapers. We need photographs that make people feel something. Barnes taps your portfolio. I'm giving you one more assignment. A special feature for the weekend edition. The Soul of New York at Night. Show me what this city really is when most folks are sleeping. As you leave the Chronicle building, evening air carries the first hint of autumn crispness. Your camera bag hangs heavy at your side. Your faithful Graflex speed graphic, extra film holders, flash bulbs, all the technical tools you've mastered. Yet, they suddenly feel inadequate for capturing something as elusive as a city's soul. The streetlights flicker on as twilight deepens. Where to begin? As if echoing your uncertainty, the first drops of rain begin to fall. The light rain quickly becomes more insistent. You tuck your precious camera bag beneath your coat and step under a shop awning. The city transforms around you. Streets turn to mirrors, reflecting neon signs. Pedestrians become anonymous shapes, hurrying through pools of lamplight. You check your watch. 11:30 p.m. The night stretches before you, full of possibility, but also daunting. How do you photograph something so intangible as a city's soul? Lost in your thoughts, you barely notice the yellow taxi that pulls up until its driver calls out. Need some shelter from the rain, son? You look up to see an elderly man watching you from the driver's seat. His face kind beneath a worn cap. Something about his eyes catches your attention. They seem to hold a peculiar wisdom, an amused sparkle that doesn't match his weathered face. Thanks, but I'm working, you reply, patting your camera bag. The man's eyebrows rise with interest. A photographer, huh? I'd like this offers some special pictures. He extends his hand. Name's Jack. Been driving this cab for, well, longer than I care to admit. You shake his hand. Firm grip. Calloused fingers. Henry Walsh. New York Chronicle. Tell you what, Henry. How about I I show you some spots most folks never see. Places where, you might find whatever you're looking for. You hesitate. It's an unusual offer, but something about Jack feels trustworthy, almost familiar. The meter's off, Jack adds with a wink. Consider it my contribution to the arts. The rain drums harder on the awning above you. Your deadline looms, and there's something in Jack's offer that sparks your curiosity. Why not, you say, sliding into the worn leather seat that smells of decades of passengers. First time I've had a photographer in my cab in years, Jack says, pulling away from the curb. Yeah, I used to know quite a bit about photography myself. My editor says my pictures lack soul, you admit, surprising yourself with the confession. Jack nods slowly. Yeah, technical skills only take you so far. The real magic happens when you connect with what you're photographing. He makes a turn onto Broadway. Let's start where everyone thinks they know New York, but at an hour when it shows its true face. Times Square at midnight is a different world from the bustling chaos of daylight hours. The crowds have thinned to scattered figures, moving like ghosts through pools of colored light. Neon signs reflect in the rain-slicked pavement, creating shimmering mirrors that seem to double the world. Most folks, well, they only see this place when it's packed, Jack says, pulling to a stop. But this is when it breathes. You step out, protecting your camera from the light rain. The air feels electric. The hum of neon and the distant sounds of a city. A saxophone from some unseen nightclub. The occasional honk of taxis. The steady patter of rain. Look there, Jack points to where a lone street cleaner pushes his broom through rivers of colored light. He's been sweeping the same stretch for around 30 years. His name's Otto. How do you know that? You ask, already framing the shot. Well, taxi drivers know everything worth knowing in this city, Jack says with a knowing smile. You raise your camera and capture the street cleaner. His silhouette, haloed by the glow of a movie marquee advertising Casablanca. Good, Jack murmurs, but wait. And as if on cue, a couple appears, sharing an umbrella, walking slowly across the square. They pause beneath the largest neon sign, faces illuminated in soft blue. Now, Jack whispers. You capture the moment, the couple, the lights, the wet pavement, creating a perfect reflection. Something about the composition feels right, in a way your work rarely has. Used to be horse-drawn carriages right where they're standing, Jack says quietly. I remember when they installed the first electric signs. People thought it was like bringing daylight to night. The way he speaks makes it sound like personal memory, though he couldn't possibly be that old. But before you question it, he guides you to different vantage points, showing you angles and moments you might have missed. A newsboy counting coins beneath a theater marquee. Steam rising from a pretzel vendor's cart, catching colored light like ethereal ribbons. Getting anything worth printing? Jack asks, after you've worked for nearly an hour. You nod, feeling a growing excitement. These do feel different, like I'm seeing Times Square for the first time. It's because you're not just looking at it, Jack says, turning back towards his taxi. You're feeling it. He checks his pocket watch. Now, you want to capture the city's heartbeat. There's someplace else we should visit. Jack's taxi winds through Harlem streets, now quieter, as the clock ticks past 1 in the morning. The rain has softened to a gentle mist that makes the streetlights glow with halos. Most clubs have closed by now, you say, watching the buildings slide past. Most, Jack agrees, with a knowing smile. But not all. Some places, the real music doesn't start until the paying customers leave. He pulls to a stop beside an unmarked brick building. Faint golden light spills from a basement window, and you hear the mellow notes of a saxophone winding through the night air like ribbons of smoke. Jack leads you to a nondescript door and knocks in a distinctive pattern. A large man in a sharp suit opens it, breaking into a wide smile at the sight of your guide. Jack, it's been too long, man. He embraces Jack like an old friend, then gives you a questioning look. He's with me, Leon, Jack says. Photographer from the Chronicle, capturing the city's night soul. You descend a narrow staircase into what feels like another world. The basement club is dimly lit by scattered table candles, creating pools of golden illumination in a sea of comfortable shadow. On a small stage, 5 musicians are playing for an audience of almost no one. Just a few scattered tables of late-night dreamers. After hours, they play for themselves, Jack whispers as you find a table. No audience expectations, just pure jazz. The saxophonist, a slender man with eyes closed in concentration, leans into a solo that seems to bend time itself. The pianist watches him with a slight smile, fingers dancing across the keys in perfect complement. Perfect light for photography, Jack comments, nodding toward the stage where the overhead spotlight creates dramatic shadows across the musicians' faces. You begin capturing images. The saxophonist, with head tilted back in musical ecstasy, drummer's hands blurred in motion, the bassist's fingers pressed against strings with elegant precision. Between shots, you notice Jack exchanging nods of recognition with several patrons. A waitress brings him a whiskey without being asked, calling him Mr. Jack with obvious affection. Come here often? You ask. In another life, he replies, and points toward the piano player. You notice how the candlelight catches just the edge of his profile. As you shine, half in shadow, half in light, like the music itself. You follow his suggestion and feel a thrill as you capture the image. There's something perfect about it, something that speaks to the essence of this hidden room beneath the sleeping city. You seem to know a lot about photography for a taxi driver. You comment during a brief pause between songs. Jack just shrugs. Picked up some things over the years. Guess I always had an appreciation for those who capture moments worth remembering. He sips his whiskey. Sometimes I think photographs remember things better than people do. The music shifts to something slower, more melancholy. A woman in a midnight blue dress steps up to the microphone, begins to sing in a voice like velvet and smoke. This is the last song of the night, Jack whispers. Make it count. You raise your camera one final time, framing a shot that includes the singer, pianist hands, and a few rapt listeners. The image feels like it captures not just what the club looks like, but what it feels like. The intimacy, the shared appreciation of beauty. Jack's taxi glides toward the Brooklyn Bridge. Its stone towers rising into the night sky like ancient sentinels. It's nearly 2:30 in the morning now, and the city has settled into that strange liminal hour when even New York seems to hold its breath. no better place to see the city's reflection than from the middle of that bridge, Jack says, as you approach the majestic span. Been carrying people across this bridge since it opened. The bridge opened in 1883, you point out with a smile. Jack just chuckles. Just a figure of speech, kid. He pulls to a stop at the bridge entrance. We'll walk from here. Best way to really see it. The bridge welcomes you with its cathedral-like presence. Gothic arches rise overhead, strung with lights that create a path of stars leading into the darkness. Your footsteps echo on the wooden planks as you follow Jack toward the center span. "27 people died building this bridge," Jack says, including John Roebling himself. His son Washington finished it, watching through a telescope from his apartment when he got too sick to visit the site. He runs a hand along the railing. There's a story behind everything in this city, if you know where to look. You reach the first tower and step into its window. The view opens up dramatically. Manhattan's skyline to the west. Constellation of lights. Brooklyn's most modest profile to the east. Between them, the East River flows like liquid obsidian, reflecting the bridge lights in shimmering ribbons. Jack leads you to a perfect vantage point, midway between the towers. This is where you'll find what you're looking for, he says with certainty. You begin to work, capturing the geometric patterns of the bridge cables against the city lights. The perfect symmetry of the towers. The way the entire scene is mirrored in the calm waters below. Wait for that tugboat to reach the center, Jack says. It'll create a path of disturbed reflections that lead the eye across the composition. His photographic knowledge seems too precise for casual interest. Too intuitive for someone who merely appreciates the art. Were you ever a photographer, Jack? You ask him directly. gazes out at the harbor, silent for a long moment. Let's just say I've spent a lifetime observing this city through different frames. He smiles enigmatically. Some people are meant to experience life, others to capture it. A few lucky ones get to do both. The diner glows like a lighthouse on the quiet street corner. Its windows steamy with warmth. Ruby's all-night eats proclaims the neon sign above the door. A few letters flickering but still proudly illuminating the entrance. Best apple pie in the city, Jack promises you as you enter. And Ruby makes coffee strong enough to develop film in. The bell above the door announces your arrival to a half-dozen nighttime patrons. 2 police officers drink coffee at the counter, nodding at Jack with recognition. A nurse, still in uniform, reads a paperback over a half-eaten sandwich. Jack, calls a robust woman from behind the counter. Jack, I thought you might come by tonight. Wouldn't miss your pie, Ruby, Jack responds, leading you to a booth. This is Henry. He's photographing the city tonight. Ruby studies you with interest. A photographer? Like it? She catches herself, looking quickly at Jack. Like my old friend, Jack finishes smoothly. You move through the diner, capturing images with quiet respect for the patrons. Most smile or nod in acknowledgement, comfortable with your presence. What strikes you most is the sense of community among these strangers. Individuals together in their aloneness. As you enjoy the perfect apple pie Jack promised, you notice a framed photograph on the wall behind the counter. It shows the diner in what appears to be the 1930s, with a younger Ruby behind the counter. Composition is striking. Morning light streaming through the windows, highlighting the diverse faces of customers from another era. That's a beautiful photograph, you comment, when Ruby refills your coffee. Oh, thank you, she says, glancing at it with affection. One of my favorites. A regular took that years ago. Had a way of seeing things, making the ordinary look special, you know. Leave the camera bag in the taxi, Jack suggests as you reach Central Park. Just bring what you need. We'll walk from here, kid. Inside, the park is transformed by night, the aftermath of rain. A light mist hovers just above the ground, catching what little illumination comes from scattered lampposts. Trees rise on either side, their leaves occasionally releasing collected raindrops that fall with gentle taps. Most folks think the park is dangerous at night, Jack says, his voice hushed. But it has its own kind of peace, if you know how to find it. The path winds to a small bridge over one of the park's ponds. You pause there, captivated by the perfect reflection of a lamppost in the still water, creating a complete circle of light. A movement catches your eye. Something pale moving through the mist. As you watch, a small group of deer emerge from the trees, their forms ghostly in the low light. They move with delicate grace to the water's edge, seemingly unaware of your presence. Incredible, you whisper, raising your camera. I didn't know deer still lived in the park. Most people don't see them, Jack says, perfectly still beside you. They know when it's safe to appear. You capture several images of the deer, the reflections in the pond, the way the mist flows around their legs. The moment feels suspended in time, as if you stepped into a pocket of wilderness that exists alongside but separate from the city. Some things in New York are eternal, Jack says quietly. They exist beyond the buildings and the streets, beyond what most people ever notice. The taxi heads toward the East River, where the future headquarters of the United Nations is under construction. Even at this early hour, skeletal framework of the building is visible against the gradually lightening sky. Not much to look at yet, you comment, as Jack parks near the fenced construction site. But what it represents, Jack replies, is worth seeing. The world deciding to come together in the heart of New York. After all the destruction of the war, something hopeful, rising. You follow him to a vantage point. The half-built structure is framed by the East River and the first hint of dawn. The construction site is peaceful now. The massive building materials and machines waiting in silent potential. The city is always becoming something new, while remembering what it was, Jack says. That's what makes it special. It transforms without losing itself. You begin photographing, capturing the interplay of the emerging building against the pre-dawn sky. The skeletal framework creates geometric patterns that suggest both strength and possibility. The future taking physical form. Jack checks his pocket watch. Almost 6. You should have time to develop those photographs before your editor comes in. As Jack drives you back toward the Chronicle building, the city begins to wake around you. Early commuters wait at bus stops. Shopkeepers raise their metal gates. Delivery trucks rumble down streets still wet from the night's rain. Thank you, you say, as he pulls up in front of your building. I've lived here my whole life, but tonight it was like seeing New York for the first time. Jack smiles, the dawn light catching the lines around his eyes. Sometimes we need to see familiar things through fresh eyes. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out a small, worn business card with nothing but a phone number. If you ever need another tour, just call. The night reveals different secrets each time. The Chronicle building is quiet when you enter. You make your way to the dark room in the basement, a space you've come to think of as a second home. Familiar chemical smells greet you as you turn on the red safe light. Begin preparing the development trays. There's something meditative about the darkroom process. A rhythm of careful steps that calm your mind after the night's adventures. As the images emerge in the developer bath, your breath catches. These photographs are unlike anything you've ever captured before. The Times Square street cleaner emerges from the chemical bath, his silhouette perfectly balanced against the neon glow. The couple sharing the umbrella appears next, their moment of wonder beneath the lights, capturing something essentially human. One by one, the night's journey materializes. The jazz musicians lost in their after-hours performance. The Brooklyn Bridge spanning not just water, but time itself. The peaceful communion of night workers in Ruby's diner. The ghostly deer in Central Park's mist. But it's what's missing that first catches your attention. In the diner photograph, the booth where Jack sat should be visible in the background. But it appears empty. In the Brooklyn Bridge series, where you distinctly remember Jack standing beside you, pointing out the tugboat, there's no sign of him. Throughout all the images, your guide is conspicuously absent, as if he somehow knew exactly where to stand to remain outside the frame. You hang the developed photographs to dry, stepping back to study them with growing wonder. They're technically excellent, yes, but they're also something more. They contain the emotional essence of each location, the feeling of New York revealing itself in quiet moments. Barnes had asked for the soul of the city at night, and somehow, with Jack's guidance, you've captured it exactly. Walsh, get in here. Barnes's voice jerks you awake from where you dozed off in the break room couch. Sunlight streams through the window. It's mid-morning. You quickly straighten your rumpled clothes and make your way to the editor's office, where you find him standing before the photographs you left on his desk. These are, Barnes struggled to find the right words. His usual gruff manner softened by genuine admiration. These are extraordinary, Henry. How the hell world did you channel Jack Finley in these shots? The name catches you off guard. Jack Finley. Barnes looks at you strangely. Don't tell me you don't know Finley's work. Greatest photographer this paper ever had. He gestures to the wall behind his desk, where you notice for the first time a framed photograph you've somehow overlooked during all your visits to his office. It shows Times Square in the rain, taken perhaps 20 years earlier, with the same street cleaner you photographed last night, looking much younger. The composition, the light, the feeling of the image, all eerily similar to your own. And the byline beneath it, Jack Finley, Chief Photographer, 1921 to 1938. Finley had this gift, Barnes continues, oblivious to your shock. He could capture a place like nobody else, what a place felt like. Not just what it looked like. Nobody's been able to match his work since he passed away. Passed away. Your voice sounds distant to your own ears. Barnes nods, settling into his chair. Heart attack, 1938. 10 years ago now. It's a shame he loved this city like nobody else. Used to say he knew every corner of it, every story, behind every building. He tapped your photographs. Whatever you did last night, keep doing it. These have that same Finley magic. You stare at the framed photograph, the face of the photographer, proudly posing beside his editor from a bygone era. The same kind eyes that watched you from the taxi driver's seat last night. The same knowing smile that guided you through the sleeping city. He used to mentor young photographers, Barnes added, especially ones with technical skill but no heart. He would drive them around in his car, showing them the real New York. Outside the office window, a yellow taxi passes, momentarily catching the morning sun on its windshield. You think of Jack's parting words. Sometimes we need to see familiar things through fresh eyes. And his business card, still in your pocket. A phone number that somehow you know will never answer, yet remains available to those who truly need it. I had a good guide, you tell Barnes, a smile spreading across your face. Someone who really knows this city, As you leave the editor's office, you pause by the window, watching the city in the daylight. The same streets and buildings you photographed hours ago, now bustling with energy and purpose. Somewhere out there, perhaps a yellow taxi is picking up another passenger who needs to see New York through different eyes. And in the dark room, your photographs wait, preserving moments from a night journey through a city where time, like light on wet pavement, sometimes reflects in unexpected and beautiful ways. Mathilde Beaumont studied the page by lamplight, her fingers tracing the faded handwriting of her grandmother's recipe book. Outside the bakery's small apartment, Paris slept under a blanket of stars. The spring night of 1946 cool and clear. The scent of yesterday's baking still lingered faintly in the air. A comforting presence in a city still finding its way back to normalcy. Han de l'eau, she whispered, reading the title aloud. Dawn bread. The special creation her grandmother had made only on important occasions. Mathilde had never seen it prepared. Her grandmother had passed before sharing its secrets. But stories of its remarkable quality had been part of family lore for as long as she could remember. From her father's bedroom came the sound of labored breathing. The war had returned him with a shattered leg and lungs weakened by months in a damp prison camp. He slept fitfully these days, leaving Mathilde to manage the bakery alone at just 23. She turned the brittle page, revealing ingredients and techniques unlike any bread recipe she had ever seen. Special flour from the old mill outside the city. Fresh yeast prepared in the traditional method. Water from a particular fountain. Precise timing and temperature controls. At the bottom of the page, her grandmother had written, "The true secret is gathering everything in the quiet hours, when Paris herself is peaceful." child closed the book with a sigh. Tomorrow's visit from Monsieur Clemenceau, the government food inspector who controlled ration allocations, loomed large in her mind. The bakery needed his favor desperately. Larger flour allotments would mean the difference between struggling on or closing the doors after 3 generations. Perhaps her grandmother's special recipe could impress him. And so she pulled on her worn coat, tucked the recipe book into its pocket, and quietly descended the narrow stairs to the bakery below. The massive old wooden preparation table stood in darkness, waiting for tomorrow's work to begin. She lit a small lantern, gathered a canvas satchel for her ingredients, stepped out to the sleepy streets of Paris. The streets of Saint-Germain were quiet, with only the occasional military jeep or late-night reveler breaking the stillness. Rebuilding was slow, but signs of the city's indomitable spirit appeared everywhere. Fresh paint on repaired storefronts, newly planted window boxes, posters announcing the return of theater and music. Mathilde consulted her list, trying to determine where to find the special ingredients at this hour. The old mill outside the city was too far to walk, and most merchants were closed. Just as she folded the paper in frustration, the distinctive putt-putt of a small delivery truck broke the silence. The ancient Citroen pulled to a stop beside her, its engine sputtering before falling quiet. The driver leaned out. Elderly man with a cap pulled low over silver hair, and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Mademoiselle, are you lost? Streets can be confusing after dark, especially since they removed all the signs during the occupation. His voice carried the gentle cadence of southern France, warm and unhurried. I need to find open suppliers at this hour, Mathilde explained, for some special baking ingredients. It's rather urgent. The old man studied her for a moment, his expression shifting from curiosity to something like recognition. Baking ingredients at this hour? I'm Marcel, he continued, reaching across to open the passenger door. I deliver to restaurants, markets, and bakeries through the night. I'm making my rounds now, if you would like a ride. Mathilde hesitated only briefly. There was something trustworthy in Marcel's gentle eyes, and time was precious. She climbed into the truck, which smelled pleasantly of wooden crates, the lingering aroma of vegetables and herbs. "I'm Mathilde Beaumont," she said, as the truck rattled back to life. "My family owns Boulangerie on Rue d'Unsen." "Beaumont," Marcel repeated thoughtfully. "Elizabeth Beaumont's granddaughter, then. I thought I recognized something in your face." "You knew my grandmother?" Marcel's eyes remained on the darkened road as they navigated through narrow streets. Many years ago, she was considered something of a master with bread. He glanced at the book in her lap. "And I suspect you're attempting her special recipe tonight. Pandalo, if I'm not mistaken." The truck rounded a corner, emerging onto a street where, improbably, light spilled from several establishments despite the late hour. Paris, after midnight, was revealing itself to be more awake than Mathilde had realized. "How did you know about my grandmother's recipe?" she asked. "Well, Paris holds many secrets, particularly after midnight. Some recipes become well known among those who work while the city sleeps." He steered the truck through a narrow passage. "Now, I believe we can find everything you need. My deliveries take me to all the right places." Marcel's truck rattled to a stop at the edge of a sprawling complex of pavilions and warehouses. Even at this late hour, Les Halles, the central market of Paris, pulsed with activity. Workers unloaded crates of produce from trucks and horse-drawn carts. Butchers prepared cuts of meat. Fishmongers arranged their morning displays with catches brought directly from coastal towns during the night. Most Parisians only see Les Halles in the daytime, Marcel explained, as they walked between stalls. The real market happens in these early hours. Everything you see in shops throughout Paris begins its journey here. The market's atmosphere was unlike anything Mathilde had experienced. A secret world operating in darkness, preparing for the city's awakening. Voices called out in a dozen different accents, exchanging goods, negotiating prices, sharing news. The air carried mingled scents of earth, fish, spices, and flowers. Henri, Marcel called to a burly man who was arranging sacks of flour. My friend here, I've brought someone seeking your finest. The flower merchant looked up, his weathered face breaking into a smile at the sight of Marcel. He studied Mathilde with interest. Beaumont Bakery, Marcel explained. Elizabeth's granddaughter. Henri's eyebrows rose. Elizabeth. Ah, there was a baker who understood flour. He disappeared into his stall, emerging with a small burlap sack. This comes from the old stone mill outside Montmartre. Ground yesterday. I was saving it for a special customer, but for Elizabeth's granddaughter. He handed it to Mathilde with a respectful nod. As they moved through the market, Marcel seemed to know everyone. Each vendor greeted him like an old friend. And when he mentioned Mathilde's grandmother, doors opened, select items appeared, and stories flowed freely. Your grandmother used to come here herself, Marcel explained, as they left a cheese vendor with a small package of special butter. She knew that the best ingredients come to those who understand the night rhythms of Paris. Did everyone know her? Mathilde asked, amazed at the reverence her grandmother's name still commanded. Those who mattered did. Elizabeth believed that good bread was the foundation of Parisian life. During hard times, and there have been many, she found ways to keep baking when others couldn't. Marcel guided her through a narrow passage between stalls. After the Great War, during the Depression, even in the early days of the occupation, They stopped at a honey vendor where an ancient woman with gnarled hands presented Mathilde with a small jar of amber liquid. "From lavender fields outside the city," she explained. "The best for your grandmother's recipe." Mathilde's satchel grew heavier with each stop. Special yeast, select herbs, sea salt, hand harvested from Brittany. Each ingredient came with a story, connection to Parisian tradition that stretched back generations. I had no idea my grandmother was so well known here, Mathilde said, as they left the bustling market. "Not famous, perhaps," Marcel replied, helping her back into his trunk. "But respected among those who understand food as more than mere sustenance. Now, there's one more place we should visit." Marcel parked his truck near Pont Neuf, the oldest bridge in Paris. The eastern sky had just begun to lighten, the first hint of dawn, casting a soft glow on the waters of the Seine. Barges moved silently along the river, delivering goods to the city's heart. On the stone embankments, early risers had already set up fishing lines, begun to arrange their book-selling stalls. The river has always been Paris' lifeblood, Marcel said, as they walked along the stone quay. Even during the darkest days of the war, the Seine kept flowing, reminding us that some things endure beyond human conflict. They descended worn stone steps to a small dock where an elderly woman was filling glass bottles from the river. "Marie," Marcel called. "Are you collecting the morning water?" The woman straightened, adjusting her headscarf as she studied them. Marcel, right on time as always. She held up a bottle to the growing light. The water is particularly clear today. Good for bread, I think. Mathilde accepted the bottle Marie offered getting it to her now full satchel. Is river water truly different for baking? Marie's laugh was like rustling leaves. Child, this river has flowed through Paris for longer than there has been bread. Some say it carries the essence of the city itself. She patted Mathilde's hand. Your grandmother understood such things. She came here often, especially before important baking. As they climbed back up to the street, the first rays of sun broke over the horizon. Painting the river and bridges gold and rose. Paris was awakening around them. Shopkeepers raising their shutters. Cafe workers setting out chairs. Street sweepers beginning their daily rounds. It's nearly time, Marcel said, checking his pocket watch. You should get back to your bakery. During the drive back, Mathilde noticed how the city transformed with the growing light. How buildings damaged during the war seemed less broken. How gardens planted in bomb craters showed defiant green shoots. How people emerging onto the streets carried themselves with quiet determination. Paris was healing. Slowly but surely. Just as France itself was finding its way forward after years of darkness. Tell me, she said to Marcel, how did you really know my grandmother? Marcel was silent for a long moment. His withered hands steady on the wheel. Let's just say we shared the same understanding of bread's importance in difficult times. He glanced at her smile with a look that contained warmth and something like sadness. Some connections are formed through shared purpose, rather than long association. Dawn had fully broken by the time Marcel's truck pulled up outside the bakery. The windows were still dark. A warm glow showed around the edges of the door. Mathilde's father must have awoken and come downstairs despite his infirmity. Marcel helped her unload her ingredients, carrying them to the bakery door. I've taken up enough of your time, he said. You have important work to do now. I can't thank you enough. Mathilde said, suddenly reluctant to see him go. I never would have found these ingredients without you. Marcel adjusted his cap, the morning light catching his silver hair. Your grandmother helped many people during difficult times. Consider this repayment of an old debt. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small, worn piece of paper. This may help with the timing for the bread. It was how your grandmother explained it once. Mathilde accepted the paper, noticing handwriting that matched her grandmother's recipe book. You really did know her well. Well enough to know she would be so proud of you for continuing her traditions. Marcel turned to go, then paused. The true secret of Pandelope isn't just the ingredients, you know. It's in understanding that bread, like Paris itself, requires both history and hope to be at its best. Through the bakery window, Mathilde could see her father moving slowly around the preparation area, laying out tools despite his painful limp. Will I see you again? She asked. Perhaps. I make my deliveries most nights. Marcel smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Paris has a way of bringing people together when they need to find each other. And with that, he returned to his truck, drove away. The engine fading into the morning sounds of the awakening street. Inside the bakery, Mathilde found her father already heating the old stone oven. You were out all night, he said, concern in his tired eyes. She set her satchel on the wooden preparation table. I found grandmother's recipe for Pandelope. I thought I could make it for Monsignor Clemenceau's visit. Her father's expression changed from worry to surprise. Her special bread. I haven't tasted that since before the war. He limped closer, examining the ingredients she began arranging on the table. Where did you find these? I had help, Mathilde said. It seems grandmother had more friends than we realized. And so together, they began the process of creating the special bread. Her father, despite his injuries, moved with practiced grace, showing Mathilde techniques she had never seen. How to incorporate the yeast, how to fold rather than knead the delicate dough, how to test the wood in the oven for the perfect temperature. Your grandmother believed bread was alive, he explained. That it absorbed not just the quality of ingredients, but the spirit of those who prepared it. He smiled at a memory. When we could barely afford flour, she would still set aside the best portion to make pain de l'aube for those who needed strength. The paper Marcel had given her contained the time and instructions needed. How long to let the dough rise in each stage, when to adjust the oven temperature, the exact moment to add the finishing touches of sea salt and herb-infused olive oil. As the bread baked, a small bakery filled with an aroma unlike anything Mathilde had experienced. A rich, complex scent that seemed to carry hints of sunshine, spring herbs, and something deeper that reminded her of childhood evenings, when her grandmother would tell stories of old Paris. When finally they removed the loaves from the oven, they were perfect. Golden crusts giving way to open, airy interiors, with a slight sheen that caught the morning light now streaming through the front windows. Just like she used to make, her father said softly, his voice thick with emotion. She would be proud, Mathilde. Monsieur Clemenceau arrived precisely at 9 o'clock with his official clipboard, radiating authority. He inspected the bakery thoroughly, measuring flour reserves, examining accounting records, questioning their production capacity with barely concealed skepticism. Your request for increased rations is difficult to justify, he said finally, making notes on his clipboard. Many bakeries are requesting the same, and supplies remain limited. Perhaps Monsieur would care to taste what we can produce with proper ingredients, Mathilde suggested, presenting a still warm loaf of pain de l'aube. This is a special recipe created by my grandmother. The inspector's expression remained impassive as he accepted a large slice. The moment he tasted it, something in his face changed. softening around the eyes, a slight pause in his methodical assessment. "This is quite remarkable," he admitted, taking another bite. "It reminds me of the bread my own grandmother made before the war." "That's often what people say," Mathilde's father said, joining them from where he had been arranging the day's simple loaves. Elizabeth had a way of capturing memories in her baking. Clemenceau studied the bread with new interest. "You can produce this quality consistently?" "With adequate supplies, yes," Mathilde answered. "My grandmother believed that even in difficult times, people deserve bread that nourishes both body and spirit." The inspector made several more notes, then looked up with an expression that had transformed from bureaucratic detachment to genuine interest. "There is a committee meeting next week regarding special allocations for businesses that preserve traditional French craftsmanship. I believe Boulangerie-Beaumont should be represented, particularly if you could provide several loaves of this bread for the committee members." After Clemenceau left, promising increased rations, Mathilde stepped outside to catch a moment of morning sunshine. The street was fully alive now. Neighbors greeting each other, children walking to school, shopkeepers arranging displays. Paris was continuing its daily rhythm, despite the lingering scars of war. Her gaze was drawn to an old photograph hanging just inside the bakery window. A group of bakers from some pre-war competition. Her grandmother stood in the center, proud and dust-flowered. There, at the edge of the group, barely visible, but unmistakable, with his crinkled eyes and gentle smile, Marcel. Decades younger, but clearly the same man who had guided her through the night. She had noticed him in the photograph before. Now she understood the connection. Not just a delivery driver, but a fellow baker from another era. Part of the same tradition that connected generations of Parisians through the breaking of bread. Inside, customers were already arriving for the day's baking. Father was sharing stories with neighbors. The small shop filling with conversation and community. Tilde took a final look at the morning street, thinking of invisible connections that sustained Paris through its darkest hours. The night workers at Léon, delivery drivers connecting suppliers and shops, the bakers who understood that feeding people was about more than mere sustenance. Like the special bread they had created, Paris itself was a daily miracle, combining history and hope, tradition and resilience, while rising towards something greater than the sum of its parts. And Mathilde, standing at the threshold between her family's past and her own future, felt, for the first time since the war ended, that she was exactly where she belonged. Sir Thomas Hawthorne sat cross-legged in his small canvas tent, listening to the relentless strumming of rain overhead. Outside, thunder rolled across the darkened forest, momentarily drowning out the steady dripping that had begun to leak through a worn section of fabric near the tent's entrance. A flash of lightning briefly illuminated the cramped space, revealing his blood-stained armor piled in one corner and his faithful warhorse, Galahad, peering in through the partially open tent flap, water streaming from his dark mane. "At least one of us should stay dry," Thomas said, gesturing for the massive horse to remain outside, though he wished for the warmth of the animal's body. The knight clutched his side, where a bandit's blade had slipped beneath his mail during the ambush hours earlier. The wound wasn't deep enough to be fatal, but in this weather, far from any village or keep, even minor injuries could turn dangerous. Another crack of thunder shook the forest. Galahad whined softly in response, pushing his muzzle further into the tent, as if checking on his master's condition. "I'm fine, old friend," Thomas lied, arranging his meager possessions in the small, dry space. His sword lay within arm's reach, still smeared with the blood of the bandits who'd attacked him. Beside it, his shield bore a new dent where he'd blocked a mace swing meant for his skull. His provisions, now reduced to a half loaf of bread and some dried meat, sat wrapped in oiled cloth. The wound at his side throbbed in time with the hammering rain, each beat sending fresh pain through his body. Thomas pressed a wadded section of his tunic against it, watching as the fabric slowly darkened. Not enough to indicate a mortal injury, but concerning nonetheless. In all his years as a knight, he had seen too many men succumb to wounds far less severe. A fine predicament we find ourselves in, he told Galahad, who continued to watch him with intelligent eyes that somehow managed to convey both concern and patience. Separated from our company, caught in this deluge, and me bleeding like a stuck pig. The horse snorted, as if in disagreement with his master's assessment. He then turned his head to look out into the storm before returning his gaze to Thomas. It was a gesture the knight had seen before. Usually when Galahad sensed something his human companion had missed. What is it? Do you hear something? Something beyond the storm? Thomas strained to listen, but could detect nothing over the constant drumming of rain, the periodic rumble of thunder. Most precious among his belongings was the map entrusted to him by Brother Ambrose at the monastery. The reason for his journey through these dangerous lands. The parchment contained the locations of several sacred sites known only to the monks, places that needed to be protected if the brewing war between rival lords spilled into these forests. Thomas had been charged with delivering this knowledge to the abbey on the far side of the mountains, where it would remain safe from the ambitions of the warring nobles. He carefully unwrapped the map from its oiled cloth covering, checking to ensure no moisture had penetrated its protection. The parchment remained dry, its markings clear and precise in the flickering light of the small oil lamp. Brother Ambrose's neat script identified key landmarks, monasteries, villages, rivers, and notable formations that might guide a traveler unfamiliar with these lands. Thomas traced their intended route with his finger, from the monastery where he'd received the map to the mountain abbey that was their destination. The ambush had occurred here, at a narrow place where the road between the two steep hills met. A perfect location for bandits to waylay travelers. Now he found himself where exactly? In the chaos that followed the attack, with his companions scattered or fallen, and his own flight through the unfamiliar forest, he had lost his precise bearings. "Somewhere in this region, I'd wager," he muttered, indicating a densely forested area on the map's eastern edge. Not terribly far, of course. But in this condition, even a day's normal travel might prove challenging. Lightning flashed again, closer this time, and the knight flinched as pain shot through his side. He fumbled in his bag for bandages, knowing he needed to tend the wound before exhaustion overtook him. His fingers brushed against something unexpected. A small glass vial with contents that seemed to catch the momentary lightning glow. "Ah," he whispered, carefully withdrawing the container. "I'd nearly forgotten about this." You see, 3 days earlier, on the road leading from the monastery, Thomas had encountered a peculiar traveler, neither young nor old, clad in strange robes that seemed to blend with the forest. Something about this stranger had immediately captured his attention, and even Galahad, normally wary of unknown figures, had approached without hesitation. "A knight on an important journey," the traveler had said. "One who might need assistance when the path grows dark." They had offered the vial, describing it as a remedy for times when all other paths seemed closed, and Thomas had felt compelled to purchase it, despite his limited funds. Now, as the wound in his side throbbed in time with the thunder, he wondered if this qualified as such a time. The vial itself was curious, made of glass so clear it seemed almost invisible, with a stopper carved from some pale wood he couldn't identify. Within, a liquid the color of amber in sunlight occasionally shifted and swirled, though he held it perfectly still. Thomas had seen many medicines and potions in his time. Herbal concoctions prepared by field surgeons, tinctures blessed by monastery healers, even mysterious elixirs peddled in marketplace stalls. None had looked quite like this. Just then, Galahad suddenly pushed more forcefully against the tent, nearly toppling the whole structure. The horse's behavior was unusual. He'd been trained for battle and rarely showed distress, even during the fiercest of storms. His massive head forced its way further inside, water dripping from his mane, onto Thomas's already damp bedroll. "What troubles you?" Thomas asked, reaching out to stroke the horse's muzzle. Galahad's dark eyes seemed to focus on the vial in the knight's hand, and he nudged Thomas's arm, as if in encouragement. Outside, the rain intensified, a deluge now hammering the forest. The knight uncorked the vial and sniffed its contents cautiously. The liquid smelled of earth after rainfall, of crushed herbs, and something undefinable, something ancient, something powerful. A particularly violent crack of thunder shook the forest, so close it seemed to rattle Thomas's teeth, and in the same moment, Galahad pushed against his arm with surprising gentleness, causing the vial to tip toward his lips. "For emergencies," he reminded himself. And with Galahad watching intently, he drank. The potion burned like fire going down, then spread a peculiar warmth throughout his body. The pain in his side immediately dulled, and a pleasant heaviness settled in his limbs. Thomas blinked as the interior of the tent seemed to shift and sharpen. Ordinary objects suddenly rendered in extraordinary detail. The weave of the canvas, the precise pattern of mud spatters on his boots, the intricate scroll work on his sword's hilt that he'd never even fully appreciated before. "This is some strange remedy," he murmured, examining the wound at his side. The bleeding has stopped, though the cut remained open. Potion was no miracle cure, but it might keep him alive until he reached proper health. Oil lamp's flame suddenly burned higher and brighter, though Thomas hadn't adjusted it. The increased light cast intricate patterns of shadow across the tent's interior, creating shapes that seemed almost deliberate in their formation. Spirals, whirls, reminded the knight of ancient stone carvings he'd once seen in a temple ruin. As another flash of lightning illuminated the tent, Thomas's attention fell upon the map spread before him. He blinked in confusion, certain his eyes were playing tricks. The ink on the parchment seemed to be moving. Thin lines of dark pigment shifted like liquid mercury across the surface, forming new paths and markings that hadn't been there before. Where once there had been simple indicators of monasteries and villages, now intricate symbols bloomed, spirals crossed lines, and small illustrations of standing stones and ancient trees. "What sorcery is this?" Thomas said, leaning closer. The movement continued, lines extending and connecting to reveal hidden paths through the forests and mountains. Notes appeared in the margins, written in a script that seemed to shift between languages, sometimes resembling the Latin he knew from church services, other times appearing more ancient, with angular characters he'd never encountered. Yet, somehow, as he focused on these writings, their meaning became clear to him. Not through conventional understanding of the language, but through something deeper, more intuitive comprehension. Tales of ancient powers, of sacred places, where the boundary between worlds grew thin, of knowledge preserved from ages before the church claimed these lands. Most prominent among the new markings was a circle of standing stones, drawn in surprising detail considering the size of the map. It appeared to be located only a few leagues from his current position, hidden in a valley he would have completely bypassed on his original route. Around this circle, the moving ink created an elaborate border of symbols that seemed to pulse with significance. Galahad whined loudly and pushed against the tent again, his large head now fully inside the small space. The horse's eyes were fixed on the transformed map, particularly on the stone circle. You see it too?" Thomas asked. He had always suspected that Galahad possessed unusual intelligence, even for a warhorse. This was something else entirely. The horse now seemed not just aware of the map's transformation, but intensely interested in the stone circle it revealed. The strange markings indicated that the circle was ancient, far older than any church or castle in these lands. According to the shifting text, it had been constructed by people long forgotten, for purposes that blended worship with something more practical. Place of healing, connection with forces that flowed through the earth itself. Thomas studied the new markings carefully, trying to commit them to memory. According to the map, the stone circle lay to the east, perhaps half a day's journey through difficult terrain. The moving ink had created annotations around it, and as he concentrated, Thomas found he could almost understand them. Phrases about healing stones and the Old One's magic, and doorways between worlds. Is this where we should be headed? Instead of the Abbey? He asked Galahad, who snorted as if in affirmation. The warhorse had always seemed to possess an intuition that bordered on the supernatural. Thomas recalled how, during his first battle, Galahad had suddenly swerved without command, saving him from an arrow that would have pierced his heart. How the horse had refused to cross a particular bridge despite all urging, only for the structure to collapse under another night's weight moments later. How he always seemed to find water when they were lost, paths when they were needed most. Thomas hesitated. His duty was clear: deliver the map to the Abbey as instructed. Brother Ambrose had emphasized the importance of this task. How the knowledge it contained needed to be preserved from the coming conflicts. Deviating from his mission for what might be nothing more than a potion-induced hallucination seemed foolish at best. Dereliction of duty at worst. And yet, the stone circle called to him, its pull almost physical. The strange traveler's words echoed in his mind. For times when all other paths seem closed. Perhaps this was what they had meant. Not just a remedy for his wound, but a revelation of alternatives when the obvious road forward was blocked. The map continued its transformation, revealing other hidden sites throughout the region. Sacred groves, caves marked with symbols of power, hilltops where ancient fires once burned. A web of connection seemed to link them all. Pathways of some energy or force that flowed through the land almost like invisible rivers. Outside, thunder crashed. Galahad remained steady, his gaze alternating between Thomas and the map. The horse had never led him astray, had saved his life more than once with uncanny intuition about danger. If Galahad thought the stone circle was important, perhaps, Thomas mused aloud, what matters is not just the monastery's knowledge, but these older truths as well. Sights the church might have overlooked or deliberately obscured. As a knight, Thomas had sworn oaths of loyalty to both Lord and Church. He attended Mass faithfully, confessed his sins, and fought against declared enemies of the faith. Yet, he had also witnessed things that challenged the priest's neat categorization of the world. Events that suggested reality contained more mystery and their sermons acknowledged. The ink's movement gradually slowed, then stopped altogether, leaving the map transformed. Thomas stared at it in wonder, trying to memorize as many details as possible. Then, even as he watched, the newly revealed markings began to fade. The stone circle remained visible longest, as if asserting its importance, before it too disappeared back into the ordinary parchment. Thomas carefully rolled the map, now showing its ordinary markings again, as the potion's immediate effects began to fade. The wound in his side still ached, but dully now, manageable, no blood. Outside, the storm showed no signs of abating, the rain falling in sheets that turned the forest floor to flowing rivulets. "We'll rest here tonight," he told Galahad, gently guiding the horse's head back outside. "And in the morning, if the weather clears, we'll find this circle of stones." The warhorse seemed satisfied with this decision, backing away from the tent entrance but remaining close, his large body providing some shelter from the wind that now drove the reins sideways. Thomas arranged his bedroll in the driest corner of the tent and extinguished his small oil lamp to conserve fuel. In the darkness, with only the occasional flash of lightning for illumination, he replayed the vision of the map in his mind, fixing the location of the stone circle and the path to reach it. As he drifted toward sleep, lulled by the rhythm of the rain and the potion's lingering warmth, he could have sworn he heard voices in the thunder, ancient and powerful, speaking in a language he didn't understand but somehow recognized, as if it resonated with something buried deep in his blood and bones. His last conscious thought was of Galahad watching over him, and of stone sentinels waiting in a valley, standing as they had for centuries through countless storms like this one, patient and eternal. Thomas awoke to silence, so profound after the night's tempest that it briefly disoriented him. Light filtered through the canvas of his tent, not the harsh glare of direct sunlight, but the soft, diffuse glow of early morning. His wound throbbed dully as he sat up. The fever he had feared hadn't materialized. "Small mercies," he murmured, pressing a hand to the injury. The bleeding had stopped completely, though the cut would need proper tending when he reached civilization. Outside, Galahad nickered softly. and Thomas could hear the horse moving around the clearing. The sound of water dripping from leaves provided the only counterpoint to the morning stillness. The storm had passed, leaving the forest washed and clean and quiet. Thomas reached for the map, unrolling it carefully on the ground before him. In the morning light, it appeared perfectly ordinary. The same parchment Brother Ambrose had entrusted to him, showing the major landmarks, monasteries and villages of the region. No mysterious stone circle, no hidden paths or ancient symbols. Had it all been a fever dream? A hallucination brought on by the strange potion and his wounded state? And yet, he could recall every detail with perfect clarity. The precise location of the stone circle, the path leading to it, even some of the symbols that had appeared around its margins. Dream or vision? The memory remained vivid and compelling. Galahad's shadow fell across the tent. The warhorse stood waiting, already alert and ready to travel despite the long, stormy night. There was an expectant quality to his stance. His head turned slightly eastward, toward where Thomas remembered the stone circle would be. "You still think we should seek it out, don't you?" Thomas asked, beginning to gather his belongings. The horse snorted and pawed at the ground once more, decisively. Thomas considered his options. His original mission remained urgent. The map needed to reach the abbey before the conflict between the rival lords engulfed the region. And yet, his wound would slow him, making the mountain crossing dangerous in his current state. If the stone circle held some truth to the healing properties hinted at in his vision, perhaps seeking it out wasn't a detour, but a necessity. "Very well," he said, folding the map, tucking it securely inside his tunic close to his heart. "We'll find your stone circle." He strapped on his sword belt and checked his provisions. The bread had remained mostly dry, enough to sustain him for another day at least. His water skin needed refilling, but after the night's downpour, finding clean water wouldn't be difficult. Thomas examined his armor, still blood-stained and mud sputtered from yesterday's ambush. The weight would aggravate his wound, and the day promised to be warm. After a moment's consideration, he left the heavier pieces packed, donning only the mail shirt for minimal protection. The task of breaking camp took longer than usual, his movements hampered by injury. Throughout, Galahad remained unusually attentive, standing close as if ready to offer support should Thomas falter. "I'm not dying yet, old friend," the knight assured him. The horse's concern touched him deeply. They had been through much together over the years. More than once, Thomas had tended Galahad's wounds after combat. Now the roles seemed reversed. The warhorse was watching over his injured master. As Thomas prepared to collapse the small tent, he paused, suddenly reluctant. Despite the discomfort of the night, the leaking canvas, the hard ground, the constant noise of the storm, the tent had been a sanctuary of sorts. Within its confines, it experienced something extraordinary, something that defied rational explanation. He ran his fingers over the worn fabric, feeling the lingering dampness from the rain. In this simple shelter, boundaries had thinned the world he knew, and something older. Something powerful enough to make ink move, and ancient languages become momentarily comprehensible. Perhaps there is more magic in the world than the church would have us believe, he said softly to Galahad, who watched him with those intelligent dark eyes. Perhaps we merely need the right circumstances to perceive it. Thomas settled cross-legged once more in the center of the tent, taking a moment to center himself before the journey ahead. A stone circle beckoned, a mystery revealed by storm and potion. What would he find there? Healing for his wound? Some ancient power in aid to his mission? Or merely a collection of weather-worn rocks, significant only in his potion-induced vision? Only one way to find out. He closed his eyes briefly, recalling the precise route shown on the transformed map. East, through the forest for several miles, then following a stream that wound between two hills into a secluded valley. There, according to his vision, the stones waited in their eternal circle. When he opened his eyes again, his path forward felt clear for the first time since the ambush. Whether the circle was real or imagined, the journey there would at least bring him closer to inhabited lands, where he might find proper healing before continuing to the Abbey. And if there is some truth to this vision, he told Galahad, if the stones hold some power of healing or protection, perhaps that knowledge deserves preservation as much as what's contained in this map. Thomas gathered the last of his resolve, crawled to the tent entrance, where morning light and his faithful companion waited. The forest beyond glistened with raindrops, each one catching the sun to create countless tiny rainbows among the leaves. The air smelled clean and rich, of wet earth, growing things and possibilities. Come on then, Galahad, he said, still within the shelter of his tent. Let's find this circle of stone. The warhorse lowered his head in what almost appeared to be a bow. his readiness evident, every line of his powerful body. Together, they would seek out this hidden place, guided by a vision granted in the depths of night and storm, following ancient paths revealed by a traveler's potion and a faithful steed's intuition. Thomas took one last look around the tent's interior, committing to memory this unremarkable space where remarkable things had occurred. Then, with renewed purpose and Galahad's steadfast presence beside him, he prepared to step out and journey to the stone.